Back in my mid-20s, my girlfriend took a 6-month contract job in Florida. Neither of us wanted to call it quits over half a year of distance, so we decided to stick it out. From my front door to her apartment complex, it was a 12-hour and 3-minute drive. I made the trip constantly over those 6 months. I didn't mind the hours behind the wheel. Usually I'd take a Friday off, hit the road by 5 a.m., spend the day cruising down the highway, and arrive just in time for dinner. That gave us all day Saturday together. The only downside to leaving at dawn was the brutal, soul-crushing morning traffic. On my very last trip down before her contract ended and she moved back home, I decided to try something different. I'd leave Thursday night right after work and drive straight through the night. I figured I'd trade gridlock for wide-open lanes. At first, it felt like a brilliant call. I hit a little rush hour crawl early on, but as soon as the sun dipped below the horizon, the highway emptied out. By 11 p.m., I was practically the only car on the road, flying down the asphalt and making incredible time. Then the midnight exhaustion set in. That's the curse of pulling a full day at work before taking on a 12-hour haul. Sometime in the dead of night, my eyelids turned to lead. My head started doing that classic sudden drop. I was fighting a losing battle against sleep, desperately trying to keep my eyes focused on the white lines flickering past. Just as I thought I was going to have to pull off onto the shoulder, a sign loomed out of the darkness. Rest area 2 miles. Relief washed over me. I just had to survive 2 more miles, pull over, stretch my legs, and splash some cold water on my face. I barely made it without drifting off the road, but I finally eased off the exit ramp into the rest stop. It wasn't one of those bright, bustling travel plazas with a 24-hour fast food joint and rows of gas pumps. It was barely a step up from a roadside outhouse. Just a squat, dimly lit brick bunker with a single, gaping doorway in the center. Inside, a short concrete hallway had the men's room on the left and the women's room on the right. I parked, stepped out into the cool night air, and immediately started doing jumping jacks and arm stretches to force some blood back into my brain. As I moved around, I noticed one other car parked on the far, shadowed edge of the lot. I couldn't tell if it was empty or if someone was inside sleeping, but it was a highway rest stop. Having one other car around didn't seem unusual. After a few minutes of pacing, I walked into the dark hallway to use the men's room. I grabbed the door handle and pulled, but it was locked tight. These weren't single-occupancy restrooms. They were multi-stall facilities. It struck me as odd, but I was too exhausted to dwell on it. It wasn't an emergency, so I walked back out to my car to stretch a bit more and wait them out. 10 minutes passed. Nobody came out of the building. Deciding to check if someone had left the door locked on their way out, I walked back inside and knocked sharply on the men's room door. Silence. I knocked harder. Nothing. Not a sound came from inside. With the parking lot completely dead except for that lone vehicle across the asphalt, I decided to check the women's room. I gave the handle a turn, and the door swung open. Before barging in, I tapped on the wood and called out, "Hello? Anyone in here?" No response. I slipped inside and turned the deadbolt behind me. I already felt creepy using the women's room in the middle of the night, and I didn't want another weary traveler walking in and catching me off guard. I quickly used the facilities, washed my hands, and cupped cold water into my face to shock myself awake. While wiping my eyes, I heard a faint sound over the hum of the fluorescent lights. I shut off the faucet and froze. Tap. It was a light, deliberate knock against the outer bathroom door. Embarrassed, I called out, "Sorry, I'll be out in just a second." The tapping stopped for a brief beat. Then came the slams. Heavy, violent blows shuddered through the wooden frame. An aggressive, relentless pounding that rattled the door on its hinges. It wasn't just a couple of impatient knocks. It was a furious, continuous assault. I stood paralyzed in the middle of the restroom, my heart hammering in my throat. Just as abruptly as it began, the pounding stopped. I held my breath, listening intently. Total silence returned to the hallway. I waited a few excruciating seconds before cautiously sliding the deadbolt open and peeking out into the hall, expecting to face an irate driver or an angry woman. The hallway was completely empty, but things had changed. The men's room door across the hall was now slightly ajar, propped open by something low to the ground. And on the tile floor, stretching straight from the men's room to the very door I had just been standing behind, was a fresh, wet trail of muddy footprints. My stomach dropped. Every instinct screamed at me that I was in danger, but the adrenaline spiking through my veins at least had me wide awake. I hurried out of the building into the open air. My relief instantly evaporated when I looked at my car. The navy blue Chevy that had been parked on the far side of the lot was now pulled up directly beside mine, close enough that our driver's doors were almost aligned. Glancing toward it, I couldn't spot anyone sitting inside, but I saw something far worse. A fresh set of muddy tracks led straight from the restroom hallway to the passenger side of my car, which sat inches from the driver's side of theirs. If I hadn't heard that frantic pounding on the door, I probably would have walked straight up to my driver's door without thinking. But a sickening feeling held me back. In a wave of sudden blind panic, I couldn't bring myself to step into the open gap between those two cars. I turned on my heel and ducked back into the building, slipping inside the now unlocked men's room. I needed a second to breathe, hide, and rationalize what was happening. I ducked into a stall, lifted my feet slightly, and tried to convince myself I was just being paranoid. It's just an eerie coincidence, I told myself. You're overtired. It's late, you're fine. Then, the heavy outer door of the men's room squeaked open. In my rush to hide, I had forgotten to lock the main entrance behind me. Through the gap beneath the stall, I heard the heavy, metallic click of the main door lock being turned from the inside. I stopped breathing. I was literally shaking, trembling so hard I had to press my hands against my knees to stay still. Slow, heavy footsteps echoed across the tile. They didn't hurry. They moved deliberately down the line of stalls until they stopped right next to mine. The adjacent stall door creaked open, then shut. Below the metal partition, I saw the tips of a pair of muddy leather boots. He wasn't facing the toilet. He was standing completely still, turned sideways, facing the thin wall that separated his stall from mine. For 30 agonizing seconds, nobody moved. Nobody made a sound. He just stood there on the other side of the partition, inches away, staring into the metal divider. I knew if I waited for him to make his move, I might not get out. With shaking fingers, I carefully unlatched my stall door, trying to minimize the squeak of the hinges. The moment I had enough room, I burst out of the stall, bolted across the tile, and threw myself at the exit door. My hands fumbled blindly with the deadbolt. Thankfully, it was a simple thumb-turn knob. I twisted it, yanked the door open, and sprinted for the parking lot. As I ran, I saw fresh, dark mud tracks stamped all over the pavement surrounding my driver's door. They hadn't been there when I first walked into the men's room. He had been standing right beside my driver's seat while I was hiding in the stall across the lot. I dove into my car, slammed the door, and locked it in one fluid motion. As I threw the shifter into reverse and slammed my foot on the gas, the headlights swept across the rest stop hallway. A tall figure clad in a muddy green hooded sweatshirt burst out of the dark corridor, running hard toward my car. I threw the truck into drive and tore out of the lot, spraying gravel as I hit the main road. Checking my rearview mirror, I saw a pair of headlights pull out of the rest area and accelerate onto the highway behind me. I floored it, pushing the needle past 90 miles per hour into the pitch-black night, my hands glued to the wheel. I didn't stop looking in my mirrors until the headlights finally faded into the distance. For the remaining 6 hours of the drive, every shadow looked like a threat. I'm terrible with car models, but I knew it was a navy blue Chevy, one of the most common vehicles in America. For the rest of the trip, every time a blue sedan or SUV appeared in my rearview mirror, my heart pounded so hard, I thought it would burst out of my chest. I made it to Florida, but that night never left me. Part of me tries to think he was just some deeply disturbed person who liked messing with tired drivers in the middle of the night. But if he wanted to rob me or do something far worse, he had every opportunity to trap me. To this day, whenever I'm on a long drive and need to pull over, I think of that man standing in the stall next to mine. And if a rest stop has only one other car sitting in the dark, I don't care how tired I am. I keep driving. Double tap if your chest just tightened. Share this with someone who loves scary stories, and hit that follow button right now so you never miss another midnight nightmare.